I had a lot of fun fooling around with envelopes with the 16-bit pack. I found it got me a little extra mileage out of some of the samples and made me able to take actual samples from the Genesis and then make even more interesting sounds out of it by using some different envelopes, specifically like the frequency modulation and sampler and even like looping them and stuff. So I want to talk about that a little, but maybe just to start, we will look at the envelope here, which is this shape that we have. All an envelope is just a it's just a shape really that we can have a parameter follow. Kind of like if you have an LFO that's a sine wave, it can move a control in that pattern. The envelope is kind of like that. So if we think of this as like a graph, the x-axis here on the bottom is time, and then the y-axis is whatever parameter we're going to be manipulating. And in the case of this one inside sampler, this is the volume or amplitude envelope. So this controls the volume of the sound over time. And a lot of synthesis is really based on, if you think of subtractive synthesis, one of the main features, you start out with a pure oscillator, which is just a, whether it's a sine wave or square wave or saw wave, you got this really full bright sound. And then you subtract things from it. You use the filter to cut out certain frequencies, and you use the envelope to cut out the sound over time. Now the way I have this set up here is this envelope is mapped to some macro controls over here, attack, sustain, and release. And right now, as it looks, we have no attack time whatsoever on this envelope. So as soon as I play a note, it will sound at full volume. This is our peak right here at full volume. We can control how high the envelope gets, but we'll leave it, most of the time it's all the way up. So we'll leave that right there. And when I play a note, we hear it as soon as I press the key. You'll notice it takes a little while to fade out. That is because my release control is cranked up. I think that was about like 10 seconds or so. If I bring this down, which brings my release down here, as soon as I let go of the note, it stops because we're telling it to go directly to 0 from here. Now, you know what I might actually do is unmap these just so we can get right in here and not have to go back and forth between the knobs on the macros, just be a little more clear. So we got no release, no attack. So as soon as we play a note, it happens at full volume, and as soon as we let go, it drops all the way to 0. The sustain level, I'm kind of going out of order here, but the sustain level is the volume your note will play as you hold down the key. So I've got it down at -21, so it's actually pretty quiet. I'm holding down a key. If I raise the volume on the sustain, it gets louder and goes lower. That's the volume that the note will play as the key is held down. We also have a decay. So this is the ADSR that you might hear about, the attack, decay, sustain, release. The D for decay tells us how long it's going to take to go from that peak volume, which is where we're starting because our attack is all the way at 0. How long will it take to get to the sustain level? So in this case, I have 9 seconds. If I play a note, it's going to start out loud, but over the course of 9 seconds, it's going to reach -22 decibels. And it gets quiet, and then it'll just kind of stay at that level until I let go. The attack can be manipulated too, so this will give us like a fade in. How long is it going to take to get to the highest level? So let's do a 1.84 second. We got a fade in, and then we're going to drop down for 9 seconds until we get to -22. And then we let go, pure silence. I'm going to bring the sustain up a tad so we can hear a little better and give us some release. We'll make it about 2.5 seconds. Now we're going down, and we're about arriving at the sustain level here, and I let go, and it fades out over the course of about 2.5 seconds. And this is how we shape our sounds a lot. We can make, I'm going to bring the sustain up. You can do it either by grabbing these squares here or just dragging up and down on the values. Squares are kind of nice because I can adjust more than one parameter at once. I'm doing the decay and the sustain by going left and right, up and down. But let's say we wanted to make like a pad sound. We might think about what a pad does. It generally fades in slowly and kind of hovers at a certain volume, and then it fades out slowly. So I've got this set to give us about, make it like about 2 seconds, say. The fade in will happen. It'll drop a little bit. Make that a little bit longer, maybe like 2 seconds. It'll drop down a little bit in volume, so it'll fade up and then kind of come down and then stay at this level, which is negative 7.7, and then it'll release over the course of about 8 seconds. So I'm just going to play this chord here. And as I let go, we fade out nicely. You can control the slope here. Like if you look, the attack is a very linear curve right now. But we can grab these diamonds and change the shape a little bit. And you'll notice when I press these little diamonds, everything here just turned pink. We can actually click that little diamond here, and now we're back to our time. But if we click this, now we're adjusting the slope. So this can give you kind of like, instead of a straight line, you'll notice like the decay kind of comes down on a nice slope here. We can make that. Click here, we can make that slope very straight if it's at 0. It's just a straight line. Or if we go below, it kind of does a slow drop in the beginning and then suddenly, boom, just comes right down. So you have some control over how you want the envelope to move over time too. And that's just clicking either this little diamond here, it's very small next to the attack decay, or just grabbing these guys here. And the sound will be, it should drop off a little. There we go. Pretty sudden. And then I'll let go. And we got a nice fade out. So far, so good? Yeah? Okay, good. So let's see. Let's bring this back here to something like that, so that when I play the note, it sounds immediately. And it will release over a couple seconds. That'll be like this. So once you have the idea of the concept of this shape and what it's doing, you can apply it to pretty much anything. Many synthesizers have certain parameters linked to envelopes, like the volume is usually the most common one. ADSR is usually for volume. But you can also do it to something like the filter. So right here you'll see we have a filter envelope, and you can engage that by pressing that button there. I'm going to just dial our filter back a little bit, and I'm going to turn the resonance up kind of high so we can exaggerate the effect so you can really hear it. So this is what my sound sounds like now. So we've got a very similar thing going on here. If we look at our envelope, it starts out with no decay, so it's going to start out at max volume or max level, and then it's going to drop down over the course of 600 milliseconds to 0%. And what this is going to mean in the case of the envelope is, well, it's all going to depend on the amount control. Right now we have no amounts, so it's not going to matter at all. If we add in some amounts, we're basically telling this peak value where it should be. I guess you could think of it like that. Right now it's at 0, so this is as if the envelope's like that. It's just not doing anything. If I bring that back up and I start adding some amount, what's going to happen is this filter is going to start, say, somewhere like over here, and then over the course of 600 milliseconds, go down to 0%, which is wherever the knob happens to be at this moment. I'm gonna unmap these two just so we're not getting confused by too many macros. So the sustain level at 0% means it's going to come back to this value, whatever your frequency happens to be. Maybe we'll put it right about there, 566. And if you listen, what we're getting now is this filter starts a little more open, and it's quickly, over the course of 600 milliseconds, going down to 566. I'm going to crank the resonance so you really hear it. You're going to hear like a pew, pew. Now I'm going to also turn off velocity because my velocity is affecting that. So I'm going to turn this off. When I turn it on, we're getting that movement. And literally what's happening, I'll do it myself here, is it's starting up somewhere, say here, and moving when I press the note. When I press the note, it triggers the envelope, and it does that movement, basically. I'll turn this back on. If I crank it all the way up, it's going to go all the way open, and then it'll come down to here. So we're starting up super high, and then that goes all the way down to here. So far, so good?
Yep.
Yeah.
I've always found the amount kind of like arbitrary. Is there a way of actually knowing how many kilohertz that actually is, or?
Yeah, it's not, no. And it's a funny number, right? 72. I'm really not sure why 72 is the number here. I can understand if it was 127 for MIDI or 100 would probably be the most sensical in my mind. But yeah, 72 is the maximum. So
Okay. Oh, that's the max. All right. Yeah, I'm sure there's probably some more reading you could do about it somewhere. But yeah, I guess if that's the max, you can kind of just use that as a scale.
yeah, right. You can kind of, I guess, do the math in your head a little.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it's hard to say where it's starting in the actual hertz.
I suppose you could use a spectrum to like have a
Oh
look
yeah,
what it's actually doing if
that's
you wanted
actually a
to
great
be
idea. Yeah,
more
and
more
I
specific.
think that's an excellent idea, and we'll make this demonstration much more clear. So now you can actually see it. Thanks for that suggestion. Like right now, this resonant, you can see like what I have it 388, 338. I'm sorry. So that's about here. So watch right about here as I crank up the resonance. We get that peak right about, and if you notice on the EQ8, if you haven't already, this little box here tells you what your mouse position is in hertz. It also tells you what note that translates to, and it also tells you the decibels, which is the vertical axis here. So this is really handy for seeing like what frequencies are sticking out, and right now it's clearly about 338 because of that filter. So if I was using the EQ and I saw I had a problem frequency like that, I might go in here, put that at about 338, and this would, I can just type it in, and I'm sort of like counteracting that now by pulling it down. Good way to use, I think it's a really handy way to use EQ8 just to see what the notes and the frequencies are. I'll make this go a little bit slower here so you can see it happen on the spectrum. There it is. We could even, on this envelope, we could have an attack too. So this will start out before our percentage, or I'm sorry, this will start out right where we have it at 338. It will move up all the way to the right because we're all the way up at 72, which is equal to 100%, and then it'll come back down. And this is going to happen over the course of, let's make it pretty, I'll try to make it even, about a little more than 3 seconds. Yeah, that should be good. It comes back. This actually illustrates the idea of these slopes pretty well too, because our attack slope is very linear. It's just a straight line. But our decay slope drops and then slowly comes to the value. So we could make this 0, or I can just click here and write 0. So it's the exact same shape. And we get that same shape with our filter. We can even bring our filter into negative values. And this is essentially like flipping the filter envelope upside down. We're going to start here, and it should go this way and then come back. There it is. And it returns. So you can have this work both ways. I find, like, let's say I'm making like a kind of like an 80s synth-based sound. I might start with no attack, filter envelope crank, because what I want the sound to do is start open and like go like close down. So I'll make this real quick. We don't need the resonance that high. So we're getting that like that closing of the filter happening real fast. It kind of has the effect almost like if you were plucking like the string of a bass guitar. It starts out bright and it kind of mellows out over a certain amount of time. If you think about when you're making sounds, if you think about like try to like visualize what the sound is doing over time. What are happening with the frequencies, and you can kind of use the filter envelope to make things mimic real-world instruments. Like if we wanted like a brass sound, I'd kind of go in the opposite direction. And we're getting that opening sound that would be kind of like the blowing almost happening in the beginning. So now this sound is like opening up over the course of a little more than half a second now. If I make this really clear. Opening all the way up. And we've got our filter envelope now controlling our filter. This is such a key part in a lot of sound design, combining whether it is the volume envelope or the filter envelope, but that's how we're sculpting the sound. That's why they call it subtractive synthesis, because we take things away. We take away the frequencies with the filter, we take away the volume with this envelope, and we also move the frequencies with the filter envelope if we want to. We can do like funny little things, like if we raise the release up here, what should happen now, let's turn this back up, is, and I'll bring that back here, I will play the note, it will start out at a high frequency, start more open, probably somewhere around here, and it will close down to here, and when I let go of the key, it will open back up. So we're going to need to make sure I have some release on this. And you can see as I let go, it opens back up there. Maybe I'll make this more obvious. So it comes down, and then opens back up. Be even more drastic. So as I press, closes, when I let go, opens back up.
Wait, so I'm assuming I could take the tail of like an 808 and do all this stuff too, right?
Yeah.
I've been
Absolutely.
doing it in such a messed up way where I saw somebody do it once on YouTube and I said, this is the only way. But like I take the loop and then it'll loop between frequencies, if that makes sense.
It'll loop between frequencies.
Yeah, so like you take the loop on the, what is that, the sampler, and then like you squish the loop like real close together, and it like loops real fast.
Okay. So
Yeah.
you're looping like that last little part there?
Yeah, and then I'll just like hold that out. It doesn't sound great. That's why I was like, how do I do this better? But I guess that's how.
Yeah. That's like really what 808s are. They're just like sustained tails of those kicks, really. And you can really emulate those quite a lot with synthesis, because it's mostly a sine wave,
Yeah.
with like an impact. That was the last pack, the 808s pack that I did. That has an impact sound, and then it's a synthesizer sound combined with it, so that you can play the impact and it'll just come out at the normal impact pitch no matter what note you play. But then you change notes on the keyboard and it plays a different sustained note. So you can play like the kick drum as like a kick drum combo bass line.
Okay. And I'm assuming that's how they did it back in the past with like MPCs and stuff, just raising the
Probably.
sustain and decay.
Yeah, probably. Like today we can do it a little more easy, I think, with synthesis.
Yeah.
I find I happen to have operator open. Like operator in its default form is just a sine wave, and it's a really nice low pitch. I don't know how well that translates on Zoom.
Yeah, it sounds pretty good.
But it's like a hefty, powerful thing. I use this as a bass line a lot, just as is. Without really doing
Brian,
too
while
much.
you're on operator, do you mind showing us how to do the filter envelope there?
Yep. Yeah. So.
Good point.
Let's look at operator then, because operator's envelopes are really key to the sound design in operator. So if we want to look in the filter, we've actually got I clicked on this tab right here. We've got the filter. I'm going to change our waveform though, because the sine wave. And I also will do this. This EQ8 was a good suggestion before, and we'll do this again. If we look at a sine wave, it's like just one tone. I'm playing an F, and that's the tone I'm getting. Actually, F2. It's really clear. So a filter on this isn't going to really do much. It's not until I get to that exact frequency that you really even notice anything happening. But if we go in here and change it to another waveform, like the square wave, was that square? Yeah, square. Or even the saw, we get many more harmonics here. So this is when the filter really matters quite a lot. I'll click on this so you can see what's happening. So when we click on the filter tab, we do also get the envelope right here. And right now it's actually really the same thing that you saw inside sampler. We got the same shape. We've got the attack. We've got the decay. We've got the release, the sustain level, all of that stuff. In this case, we've got a percentage. So at its default, the envelope is at 0%, which means it's not affecting the filter at all. But we can raise it up to 100% or down to negative 100%. I don't know why it's percentage here and works out to 100, whereas in sampler it's 72. I think percentage is nice, 100%. So this will say basically this peak, if at 100%, the peak value is a fully open filter at, I guess, 18.5 kilohertz. So let's bring the filter back a little bit so you can see where it is right there. And I'll maybe just give the resonance a boost so we can hear this. And now that I've got the decay we'll make it about like 2.5 seconds. And the envelope is at 100%. We're now getting that movement on our filter. And if I make a slower envelope, it'll go slower. We can do a fade in kind of, like where it'll move up to 100% and then come back down. There it is. So it's essentially the same thing as inside sampler. Now, where I think operator gets really interesting with the with the envelopes, is that each one of these different operators or oscillators, whichever you want to call it, I guess, they all have their own envelope. So operator is a frequency modulation synthesizer, meaning like you can use one oscillator to modulate another one, and that will just add a lot of harmonic content. We do frequency modulation, really, if you look at, I guess I could do it in here. We can do frequency modulation on a smaller level if we go with the LFO here. I'm going to turn off these destinations. And the LFO is going to modulate oscillator or operator A. Turn that up. It's modulating the pitch. You can actually see the pitch is moving. But it's at such a slow rate that we can hear the pitch. If I speed that rate up, still hear it. But it starts to get a little bit more like a tone. And if I do the high, operator is kind of cool because its LFO has a low speed and a high speed, also a sync. But I'm going to go to high here, start it at 0. That filter moving too. So as I raise this, like right now you can hear the pitch moving, right? Real fast. But if I raise this, it's going to start sounding like a tone. Back into actual pitch modulation. So what happens is when you have an LFO, if you stay below the audio range, like the audible range of a frequency, which to the human ear is supposed to be around 20 or so hertz, most LFOs don't really go higher than that, because once it gets faster than that, we stop hearing the movement of the pitch or the filter or whatever we're modulating, and it starts to create a tone. And that is what operator is all about. So we take audible waveforms that we can actually hear that are faster than 20 hertz and probably even faster than that. And then we're modulating another one with that sound. So we're modulating the pitch so fast that it becomes a tone. And if I were to, let's turn off this LFO. If I bring in this here, we're going to start hearing a tone. Kind of metallic sound starts happening. We can actually set these to be much lower. So if we go into fixed mode, I can actually pick the frequency I want this to be. And if I have it real low like this, at 10, we kind of hear the pitch moving, especially if I bring this multi down. So you hear it more like a vibrato type of thing. But once we get into that audible range, so now it changes the timbre. So far, so good. This frequency modulation synthesis is a deep topic.
Yeah.
But what I wanted to point out with, as far as envelopes go, is that we can use these envelopes to change the duration of that frequency modulation. So right now, the way this envelope is set up on this one, this operator, which is modulating A, it's just going to modulate it at 100%. It starts all the way at peak value and it doesn't go down until I let go of the key. But if I bring the sustain down and maybe let it only last for a little over a second, this volume knob is basically starting up here and then getting turned down over the course of about a second. So it's going to give us like kind of an impact sound. That like little metal sound in the beginning. Maybe if I crank this up a little, it might be more obvious. So you hear that? I'll turn this off so we don't hear it. Turn it on. We get that kind of like distorted metal sound. Sometimes it's almost even easier to hear on a sine wave because the sine is so pure. Here it is normally. Here it is with the very quick 1 second of frequency modulation. And it's got that kind of like bell sound almost. And we could change this. We could have it fade in. So we need to right click that. Over the course of, say, that long. Maybe the fade out will be longer. And you can see actually if you look at the EQ, those frequencies go up and then they come back down in the same pattern as the envelope. Now, if we were to go back to one of these 16-bit instruments, let me bring this one back so it's not all unmapped as I had. What I've got going on here is a frequency modulation amount, which is controlling the frequency modulation inside sampler. And I've got this up right now at -12, and it's a sine wave, and its pitch is at 1. So this is a lot like what we had in operator, where we have, in this case, the pitch was at 6, and we are using a sine wave again, fading it in. Well, in here, we've also got that same envelope, and I've got this turned up, and the decay is 10 seconds. This knob is controlling the decay of that envelope, which is this parameter here. So when I play this note, I'm going to also, let me bring the volume down, the attack on the volume down so that it starts immediately. So we start off with kind of a metallic sound, and then it slowly fades out over the course of 11 seconds. We bring this down. This is the sound without that. Bring it up. We get that metallic sound. We can crank up the pitch, it becomes even more obvious. So I'm using this envelope now to add some of that frequency modulation, but then take it away pretty quick. This is really like the core of the Genesis sound chip, is all this frequency modulation and how the envelopes are interacting with each other. Are they fading in? Or are they making almost like a pluck sound in the beginning? So that's another really cool parameter, the frequency modulation within sampler. Is you can do frequency modulation in sampler much like you can in operator. There's also the pitch envelope, which is another really fun one. The pitch envelope is very similar in that but it actually has like another dimension to it. So this is this center line, this 0%, is the pitch you want things to be in. That's the normalized pitch. What the pitch envelope can do is change the pitch of a sound over the course of time using an envelope. So right now it's at 0, so we get nothing. But if I crank this up to, say, 12 steps here, the sound, since my attack is at 0, it's going to start 1 octave higher, and over the course of 600 milliseconds, it's going to go back down to where we are at 0%, which is the note I'm actually playing. So you get a kind of pew. So you hear that kind of meow. We can draw that out if we want. little bit longer, or we can even raise the amount. We'll go up 4 octaves. And we get that kind of sound. When you do these really short, you get like these like laser beam sounds. And if you go real short, like I guess like about 100 or lower, it really registers almost more like a click. So you can use the pitch envelope actually to make like little click sounds. So if I were to go into operator, let's go back here. I'll turn this one off. Go in here. We got this sound. I can go into where is it? Pitch envelope. Here we go. So we got the pitch envelope over here. Right now it's at there's no attack, no decay. The pitch envelope percent is here. Sometimes you just gotta figure out where all these things are. But this is the percent. So we've got it at 12, which is an octave again. And it's moving down an octave over the course of 600 milliseconds. We can drag that up, and my peak gets higher. But if we bring this real low, now it's giving me like an impact sound. Which is a way you can use this to create like a drum sound. You can use the pitch envelope to give you like a little bit of an impact on your drum sounds. Experiment with like how high it needs to go. And it changes the tone of that impact. If you use this in conjunction with the filter envelope, you can get even more fun stuff. We got someone else is here. The Divine Eye Master's coming in. Divine Eye Master, welcome. So, I can also use the filter here to get a similar effect also. So let's look at this envelope here. It's a long envelope. But if I make it short again, I'm moving the filter so fast that I'm creating an impact here. And I think I need to play around with the resonance to kind of get more. And again, I'd probably want to go in here for the volume and just shape this like a kick drum, which has a quick attack and an immediate decay. We get like kind of percussive sounds now. Up here it starts sounding like laser beams and things. So the pitch envelope is handy. I got it here now. You can make things drop out from octaves above, but it can even be a nice thing for just subtle movements. Dropping. And this also goes into the negative region, which now it's, instead of coming from high, it's going to start low and come up. I bring this low, probably like... When you go to shorter times, it's not as jarring. You can kind of get these nice, like, kind of like swelling up to the pitch chords. Every note is kind of rising up there. All right. So far, so good. All right, nice.
Yeah, good, good.
Okay, so let's now go into something else that's pretty fun, which is loop. You can loop your envelopes too, which can be, this is kind of the thing that I've gotten excited about recently, is the looping feature of your envelopes. So we've got our amplitude envelope here. I'm going to bring the sustain down a bit, and the release and the decay are on the same macro. So right now this sound is now more like a pluck. before. When I had the sustain up, it's like long chords. Bringing the sustain down gives me kind of a pluck. Oh, the abacus. That's who it is. Okay, nice. I didn't know you were one and the same. Good to see you.
Oh, good to see you, Brian.
Yeah, nice to have you here. Awesome. It's cool to get like a name and face together. All right, so I got this little plucky sound now because I designed the volume envelope to just have an immediate attack and a real short decay. The looping feature allows us to loop the envelope. So normally an envelope goes through its cycle once and that's it. But if we turn on loop, we can loop it over a certain amount of time. So let's give it like a second. Do I have to hit play? What is this? Okay, so I'm just holding down the keys. And these notes are just repeating every second and a half, basically. Every second, 1.671 seconds, it starts this envelope over again. It starts with the volume up high, and then just brings us through. Probably a more helpful version of this is beats. So I set this to 16th notes now, and it's repeating these notes. It's repeating this envelope every 16th note. Make it a little slower, maybe 8th notes. And I think this is pretty exciting, like, because now I'm just holding down a couple notes, but it's got this rhythm to it now. There's also, so beat is gonna follow like your tempo of your song. So if I had a metronome going. So it follows right in there. There's another one called sync, which will sync you with the time. So beat will play back at 8th notes, but you can get them all like scattered and off. So you hear there's like kind of that flamming going on. If I have sync on, I shouldn't be able to get that. Or maybe it's the other way around. Yeah. So the one will get that metronome off. The one will keep you like right in time with the music. It basically quantizes it, and the other one will just play them in time. So trigger is meant more like for like percussive stuff. So it'll just trigger this envelope once, and it doesn't matter how long you hold down the key. So like if you're playing a drum, say you like playing a drum sound, you don't usually hold down the pad on a drum sound. You just kind of hit it, and that's it. Trigger will allow the whole envelope to happen, even though you're not holding down the pad. Normally, you have to hold down the pad or the key to make this all happen. So by doing something like this now, I've got this going with my volume, but now we can start mixing these things together, right? So I'll bring this down here, and we'll maybe turn up our envelope here. So we're getting that like psoo. But it only happens once. Let's turn on the loop. Now it's happening, it's looping at 16th notes. We can go maybe like quarter notes. And now every other one of these notes, we get that kind of filter zap sound. We'll make it more obvious. And we could change the timing. So we can start getting like all these like interesting rhythms happening. Maybe we'll make it go up even. It's starting to be like a really neat sound. Like don't forget we started with just a plucky kind of sound. Now we're getting this. And we can apply this to all of the other envelopes we have here. So if we went to our frequency modulation, We got this as a long one. We can also apply the looping idea to this. I'll take the delay off too, so you can maybe not get. But all of this movement is happening just because the envelopes are now looping around and triggering each other in interesting ways. And I think this is just such a it's a cool sound design thing. We can maybe have these fade up. You do the same thing with the filter if you wanted to. Might be too fast for the filter. Now the filter's doing all kinds of movement over the course of a bar. Should come back soon. Yeah, it's I think it's pretty exciting that you can have these not only just happen once, but then become a looping thing. And Sampler also has an auxiliary envelope too, which isn't mapped to anything. It's the same concept. You just have the shape that you can then decide to put on any of these parameters. And then you have all kinds of other options to play with that way. How's this going so far? I don't know. Sometimes it's easy to get sucked into all kinds of crazy stuff. And you guys cool? You with me?
Yeah.
Any questions on any of that yet?
No, that looping thing's real cool. I did not know that you could do that at all.
Yeah, it really opens up a lot of doors for your sound design, and it's really nice if you want something to be rhythmic in your music.
Yeah.
You know, something that might just be normally static. Now it's got some movement and some life. I wanted to mention the Max for Live device called Envelope Follower. I'm going to put it on a separate track. And I'm going to set this track to listen to my microphone. Hello. Okay, so here's what I think I have to do. We got to record enable it, but I don't want to hear it because that's going to be confusing. So I'm going into utility. I'm going to get a mute on here. So what I've just done is, so we don't have to hear my voice coming at two different places at once, I just put the utility on there and have it muting things for me. So handy. I actually use the utility a lot in my live sets for the mute button. I have it on my drum track, so I can just hit the mute on there and silence the drums for a second. And what's cool about that is I can mute. Suppose I had a reverb on my voice, like I do now. I'll show you how I do it with the drums. I'm talking, I want to mute my drums. At least the reverb still carries on, but now you don't hear my voice through there anymore.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Yeah, if I were to just mute the track, I'm talking, I get all this reverb, I mute, and then, suddenly it just stops. But utility is nice because it lets you place the mute button where you want in the signal path. Okay, but I'm muting this because I don't want to hear my voice. I'm just using it for information for this envelope follower. So you notice as I talk, this little line happens. It's listening to my voice, and it's creating an envelope, which I guess really an envelope is just a shape. It's just a shape that we can use to modulate something else. In our synthesizers, whether it's operator or a sampler or whatever, the envelope is the ADSR, the attack, which is this portion, the decay, which is this portion, the sustain level, which is the level it will rest at while you're holding the key, and then the release is how long it takes for it to fade out after you let go of the key. But the envelope follower is making a shape based on the volume of my voice. And now I can take the volume of my voice and apply that to any parameter I want. So let's go in here. What's a good one? I've already kind of played around with this so much. I'm going to turn the filter envelope off. Maybe we'll turn off this looping envelope here too. And I'll bring my sustain up. So I just have a nice long chord. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this Max for Live device, this envelope follower, which is making a shape with my voice, click map, and now I can map this envelope to control any parameter I want. I'm going to put it on my filter frequency. And as I talk, I move the filter.
Wow.
Now, it doesn't have to be your voice. It could be anything. It could be a drum track that's triggering a filter, or whatever you want. I've done it where like a hi-hat will open a gate, say, or trigger. You can trigger reverbs, whatever you want. You've got control. You can use the volume of one thing to control a different parameter. Now you notice here, I'll play something on here. It's kind of like too low. The filter's too closed for us to really hear anything. So I'm going to just go into this parameter here, and we'll maybe bring the 0% up, which means it's not going to start all the way at 0. So now the filter starts there. And as I talk, I'm moving the filter. Hey, hey. I can add some gain so that my voice takes us higher, so we get more volume out of that. And now we should have a voice-controlled synthesizer using this envelope follower. Every time I talk, I'm moving that.
Is cool.
That's very cool. Yeah, I can see that being quite useful. You could read a poem or something and have the poem over your music, but not actually even hear the words.
Oh, that's crazy
Yeah.
thinking. That's a
So-
great idea.
Here's what I did. I actually just inverted these numbers now. So 100% is where this parameter will start, and when I talk, it brings it down to like 33, say. Now the effect is opposite. So this is kind of nice. I can have my sound, but then when I talk, it kind of moves out of the way for me. So that could be something useful too. You have control over like how fast things move. So how fast is the rising? Like, does the volume go up right away, or does it go up like a little mountain? Right now, it's instantly. As soon as I talk, the volume goes up. But if I do this, it goes up in a slope. So maybe I want it to fall a little slower. Hey. You get that nice drop instead of hey. So when I do this, now when I talk, it kind of stays down out of my way, and then slowly comes up. Yeah. So you can have a lot of fun controlling the effects in your music by just yelling into a microphone. Or it could be, it could just as easily be some kind of instrument you're playing that controls it. But this is really all this, the reason I wanted to show you this is like now you can apply an envelope to really anything using anything else. A similar device would be Shaper. It's also a Max for Live, which should be, if you have Max for Live, it's in there. Shaper, I'll put it over here because it doesn't need to be on anything. Shaper lets you have an envelope like this that you can map to anything else, and it gives you a readout of what it's doing. So this what's cool about this one is it lets you can turn off snap, and I can draw points wherever I want. I believe if I hold Alt, I can change the shape of them. And the concept is really pretty similar to the envelope. In this case, it's almost more like an LFO, I guess. But the concept is similar. Like now this can be mapped. We can map this to the frequency instead. Well, it probably won't let me because that's already mapped. So let me X out of that. So I just unmapped that from the frequency. But now I can map that parameter there. So it's moving according to this, and the rate allows us to control it. Shows us how fast it goes. And we get to see this nice readout. It's telling us what the filter is doing. Up, down. And it also comes with some nice pre-made shapes.
And Ableton has come such a long way. I remember back in the 8, you had to be an envelope guru to shape.
Yeah, well, a lot's changed since 8, that's for sure. But yeah, a lot of those features are still there. Like, I don't think samplers really changed much since then, except for the filters. They got the new filters, but I don't really think anything else.
I think the Max for Live stuff's pretty cool. I found myself using the Convolution Reverb a lot.
Yeah, that's a really cool one. The Convolution Reverb, yeah. Oh, there's so many great things in there. A lot of people get nervous and intimidated by it because you think you have to be a programmer to use it, but you really don't. You don't have to know how any of these things work any better than you need to know how anything else in Live works. You know, you could build things in Max for Live and you can modify things, but you don't have to. And I don't do it. There's so many people out there doing it that I'll let them take care of that. I'll do my thing, you know. But don't ever be intimidated by it. Like, you drag these in a project the same way you drag anything else into a project.
Yeah, with that envelope follower, it could be useful if you have like clashing frequencies in a mix as well, I guess. So you could kind of duck them out of the way based on what something else is doing.
Yeah, exactly. Like if you have, say, like a lead guitar and you find it's not sitting well with the rhythm guitar, you can use this to pull down the volume on the rhythm guitar when the lead guitar happens, or you can use it to pull the frequencies down. Even it does because technically I guess you could accomplish that example with a compressor. You could have a compressor ducking the rhythm guitar when the lead guitar plays, but that pulls down everything. You might instead have an envelope follower on that rhythm guitar with an EQ on it, and let's just say like this is where your lead guitar wants to live. I can put that there. I can put the gain here, and right now it's going up, but we don't want it to do that. We want it to go down. So we'd probably start this at 50%, and then this is actually pretty good. Every time I talk, I'm ducking that frequency only. So I still would keep all the low end and the high end, but I'm just moving that one frequency for the sake of the guitar. And in this way, like, you can actually, like, there are, Isotope has some devices, I think even Fab Filters might do it, where they have the dynamic EQs. I don't know, Isotope does it, and it's a little more robust, and maybe it's easier to set up, and it's super cool what they have, but with a little know-how, you can create your own interactive dynamic EQ without having to spend the money. Yeah. And this is just an EQ. Like, I was doing a track at one point where I wanted it to sound like every time the kick drum hit, the entire song was distorting, almost like if you've ever like had like a broken speaker on a stereo. I wanted that effect, so I had the envelope follower listening to the kick drum, and the envelope follower was mapped to some distortions. I think I had like the saturator and maybe even like the dynamic tube device, so that every time the kick hit, it kind of like broke the song apart a little bit, and it sounded like it was too much for your sound system. So that was a fun way to use the envelope follower to get one sound to make something else in your track happen.
I love it. I love it. I could see myself using some of what you were talking about, some way, somehow.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, you know, sometimes it just you just get the idea, and they're like, oh, that's cool. Like I can have that looping envelope in it, and I'll get these extra rhythms going on. And that might be better than adding a new part in. That might clutter up the mix.
Mhm.
You get a little more mileage out of what you already have.
You could like use this to make like you know how people use sidechain compression for like 808s and like basses and stuff like that.
Yeah.
You could do this with the EQ now, right? And it wouldn't, because like you said earlier, when you use ducking on like the 808, it kills everything. But
Yeah.
like you still want some of that like grit. So like you could just use the EQ with the envelope follower and just like find the frequency the kick's at and affect it that way.
It's very true. A nice little feature about this also, see this little list looking thing? If I click on that, it gives me 7 other places to map this.
Oh.
So to your point, right? Let's say my voice is the kick drum. I can say map it to that high pass filter, and we'll get it just right. So when I talk, it only cuts out like about up to like 100 or so. Boom. So that you're right. Like if I have like some music, like some, I don't know what, maybe it's like a piano playing and I want it to duck out of the way of the kick drum or something, or bass, you know, I can just duck out the frequencies I need to duck and not the entire sound. So you can still keep like the energy of your, like maybe like the fuzziness of the bass, like the high end, but you'll remove the bass, the stuff that's actually in the way of the kick drum. And it can be like a more transparent way to get that, the same like effect as ducking, where you're making room for the kick drum, but you're also not getting that like sucking feeling, like the whole track just disappeared for a second.
Mm-hmm.
You're just moving what you need to move.
I've been looking to find how to like do that because I know FL Studio, literally you just like go in their EQ and you can do that, but like that makes my life 10 times easier because it's more, this is like more direct and precise.
There's another way you can do it too.
Oh.
If you have an, there's like always a lot of ways to do things in live. If you have an audio effect rack, I'll do this kind of quick. You can say put an EQ3 on here. I'm gonna duplicate this. Well, for now we'll just do one. I'll call this lows, and then I'll call this mids highs. So when you have an audio effect rack like this, you're allowing, I'll bring it over here so you can see it. You're allowing the sound, you're splitting the sound, or you're really doubling the sound here. We're getting it out of this chain and out of this chain. Now, since I have the EQ3, I can mute the mids and the highs on my low channel, and then I'll mute the lows on my mids and high channel. So now, basically, I've divided my mids and highs from my lows. And this should still sound roughly the same. EQ3 is supposed to color your sound a little bit, but it's pretty close. It's I haven't really had too much of an issue with that. And now I can take my compressor and put it just on my lows channel right after my EQ3. So now it's only listening for the lower frequencies. You can actually see this too if I put an EQ here, where only the lows are coming on this side. And then on here, my voice, only the higher stuff is coming through.
That's cool.
So now I can have my, I can sidechain this to whatever I want it to sidechain it to, my kick say, and it will only compress the low end this way.
Oh, that's brilliant.
There's
a lot of stuff you can do with this. Matter of fact, Brian, I still use your, I remember we made what was it? It was a bunch of chains. We did an audio effect rack with a bunch of chains and a bunch of audio effects like looper and all that stuff. I still use it to this day.
Oh, cool. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. This is the one I was going to mention. I've got this on my site to download. It's a free pack. It's just called Low Mids. I think it's called like Easy Multi-Band Effects or something. But this one's just set up in threes. It's got lows, mids, and highs. So, like, well, I'll put it on this track here so you can actually hear it. Okay, so let's see. What does this even sound like anymore? Let's open the filter up. So with this audio effect rack, I could put, I don't know, what would I want to put on the bass? I could put like overdrive. Oh, I lost. Come back here. I can put overdrive. Come here. On the bass parts. So only the bass are getting this distortion. Then I could put, I don't know, a phaser on the mids. Maybe I'll put, I don't know, redux on the highs. So I'm affecting the different frequencies of the sound now, instead of everything. You can really hear with the bit crusher. This is what it sounds like on everything. But this is what it sounds like on only the highs. It's not quite as intense. Because I do this often with things like a bass or a kick drum, where a lot of times you don't really want to do too much to the low end, the very low frequencies. You kind of want to leave them alone. But I might want like a little edge to my kick drum, so maybe I'll put a little distortion on the higher frequencies, so it just has like a little more power. And that sometimes can be helpful when you... Have you ever, like, listened to your song on like on a cell phone or on your laptop speakers, and you can't hear the bass all of a sudden because it's so low? Like, I know my laptop speakers don't really put out any sound below 100 hertz. I've tested it where I lower the filter, and once I get to like 100, I don't even hear anything. It sounds like nothing's coming out of my speakers. They just don't reproduce that kind of low energy. So if you ever have like a kick drum or a bass you can't hear, maybe putting a little saturation on the high end only, it'll still preserve the integrity of the low end when you're actually on a system that can reproduce it, but it will give you a little bit more harmonic frequencies and just something that you can hear on like a cell phone speaker or a laptop speaker, because a lot of people are going to listen to your music on those, unfortunately, despite the work you've put in to make it sound so glorious. You're going to have people that are listening on their phone. They're like, oh, good job.
Oh, so you're saying, warming up the highs on the low end?
Yeah, on like a bass drum or a bass sound. Like sometimes those get lost. So, you know, like you are adding harmonic content, so it might affect the mix a little bit, but at least you're allowing that stuff to be a little more audible. That's always a big problem with any kind of music that uses like sub bass, and it just doesn't translate. Those little
I just
speakers.
learned something, because that is my biggest problem, is getting it to the sub frequencies to translate over any speaker. So you hear it I can hear it in my studio monitors I have now, but
Right.
I put it on I bounce it down to a MP3 or WAV file and can't hear anything on an iPhone or whatever.
Yeah, they just can't generate those low frequencies. And if you're using something like I was mentioning before, I like to use Operator. I don't know what I've done to it here, but I like to use it for like, I'll just get the default. The default sine wave operator is just a nice sine wave. But if you look, when I play like this note, it's only putting out at 65 hertz. And I know my laptop can't put out that frequency. So, you know, it can be a way if I were to take, what did I do with that thing? I'll just grab it over here. Lows, mids, highs, put that here. I wonder if this will even matter, because operator is, the sine wave is so low, but we can just test it out a little bit if I put like, I don't know, just for the heck of it, let's try like pedal. Yeah, it doesn't even matter here, but what did I do? I did something funny here. I dragged the wrong thing from somewhere. Put that on the mids. So I'm getting like a click now. Let me hear that. That might be something I can use. I think in this case though, what I'd probably do is like bring in a little more frequency. Just so I can hear it a little better. Not too much though. Just enough. Bring it through.
So you can do all that low, mid, and highs just using an audio effect rack?
Yeah. Yeah, because what I'm doing here with EQ3 is I'm just turning off the mids and the highs and letting just the one band through so that I can put the effect on just the mids in this case, or just the highs, or just the lows.
Sure.
Yeah. I thought I had another one.
You got a low battery alert up there.
I'm getting a low battery?
Yeah, or is that me? Oh, that's me.
Oh, okay. I'm all plugged in, I thought.
No, I saw it looked like it was off your screen because like it's right there. I was
Yeah,
like, oh
okay.
no, Brian.
That's happened before.
I think I was there for it.
Yeah, my camera died once.
There we go.
Oh, this is it. This is probably the one you should, if you want to find on my website, Easy Multiband FX. This is a basically souped up version of what I just showed you that allows you to change the volume of the lows or the mids or the highs individually. It allows you to change the cutoff frequency. So like this is telling you the difference, like where does the low end and the mid begin? And this is where does the mid end and the high begin. So you can determine that. And then within there is another audio effect rack that allows you to fade in effects like it is a dry wet. So that's on the internet somewhere. I'm sure if you write easy multiband effects, I guess I can just find it for you guys. Should know where my stuff is, right?
I think it's Brian Funk at gumroad.com or something like that.
Let's say easy multi-band effects, free Ableton Live pack number 97.
Yeah.
There you go, in the chat.
Thank you. I need that.
Thanks, Brian.
I hope it helps.
I think I got everything from pack one.
Oh yeah, nice. I'm not sure I do anymore.
Y'all don't understand. I've been following this guy ever since I first bought Ableton.
It's been a long time, you know. Like you've sent me a lot of tracks.
Mm-hmm.
I always know it's you because it says Abacus. It's cool. Yeah. I was gonna, like the envelope. I have Wavetable open just to kind of like show you that the concept is the same. You know, you've got your amp envelope, which controls the sound over time. You got a fade in now, or quick. We can make a quick pluck. We can have it sustain. We can change the release, and it's also got looping, so we can loop it. Doesn't seem quite as robust though as the other looping on sampler, which is interesting. Not as many choices, but then envelope 2 and 3 you can put to any source you want, so you can really connect things up. But once you get the idea of what an envelope is, it's really powerful, and you might be able to accomplish things with them that you might believe you need something else for, especially when you start doing the looping.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I think that brings my talk on envelopes to a close. I went through all these notes here. Got
Thanks,
everything.
Brian.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Even though I came late, I appreciate it. I've been watching a lot because I never knew how to use envelopes. I tried. It was actually I bought Slate Digital's masterclass pack and
Okay.
started looking at synthesis, and yeah, but you hit some stuff that I didn't remember. So
Nice.
Mm.
That's great.
I think even watching that envelope follower with your voice kind of gives good insight into like what an envelope is, because you can see how when we talk, all our words, they start loud and go down.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Like, because I think I was saying when you are like trying to design a sound, like think about what's happening as the audio occurs, and this really just shows you what the audio is doing. You can just see the line going. But that's like what you can mimic in the shape with the envelopes.
Mm. It's cool.
Yeah.
All right.
Well, guys, I hope you have a good rest of the night. I'm really happy
Thank you, Brian.
y'all
Thank
made it
you.
here.
Fellas leader.
It was nice
It's
talking
morning
to you.
here. It's 12:30. It's lunchtime for me, so I'm
Oh
gonna
my
go.
God. Yeah, I'm like
I should be
thinking
doing
time
some
for
real
bed
work.
soon. That's cool. I'm glad you made it though. Other side of the world.
Sweet.
That's super cool.
Thanks,
All right
guys.
then.
all right.
Well,
Catch up.
have a good time. Take care, and let me know if you make any music with any of these sounds. I'm always excited to hear that stuff.
Yeah.
So
Oh yeah. I got a project coming up, so I'm gonna see what I can do with that 16-bit pack.
nice, nice.
So,
I look forward to that.
all right.
Cheers.
All right, everyone. Have a
Cheers.
great night.
Bye.